Welcome to section 9.7. This is solving quadratic equations using square roots. And so in various cases you can sometimes use square roots to help you solve an equation if you have just simply x squared and there's no x term and there's some sort of helpful term for your c term essentially. So we're just going to be looking at square roots. A few main ideas that we need to pay attention to start out with are these. So for square roots, one of the main ideas we need to pay attention to is this concept right here. Right here we have 3 times 3, that equals 9, and negative 3 times negative 3, that also equals 9. So essentially what we can say if we're going to take the square root of 9, the square root of 9 is going to either be a positive 3 or a negative 3, because we know that both 3 times 3 equals 9 and negative 3 times 3 equals 9. So it could be either written as, if you had a situation where it was x squared was equal to 9, we could essentially say x would be equal to a positive 3 or a negative 3, one or the other. Okay, it could work either way. It could either be positive 3 or negative 3. So to start out with, square root property. This is something we need to know and be able to do well. So we need to be able to solve a quadratic equation in the form x squared equals a. So this sort of format, x squared equals a, so x squared equals a number, x squared equals 16, let's say, and take the square root of both sides. In order to solve that, we need to be able to take the square root of both sides. So we could take the square root of x squared, the square root of 16, square root of x squared, that essentially this square root undoes the squaring, so we just simply have x. And that is equal to the square root of 16, which is either plus or minus 4. So x could equal a positive 4 or a negative 4, either one. So those are both answers or solutions. So looking at this, we can look at x squared is equal to 8, or a, which is also the same as saying the square root of x squared is equal to positive or negative square root of a. So x is simply this plus or minus the square root of a number. So here is our example problem, that 4 and 16 number problem. So here we go. Here, let's practice a couple with this. We have x squared is equal to 15. So if we were to then take the square root of x squared and the square root of 15, we would have resulting just simply x is equal to positive or negative square root of 15. As well, if we wanted to, we could actually plug that into a calculator and we'd see that it equals plus or minus 3.87 if we were to round to the hundredths place. So that's the same thing, but I would like the most accurate form of your answer in most cases. As well, we can look at this over here, and we have the square root of x squared and the square root of negative 4. Square root of x squared, that just gives us an x, and then the square root of negative 4, if we think about it, we can't do that. This is not going to work because negative 4, it is equal to essentially 2 times a negative 2, or negative 2 times 2, but it's not 2 times 2, or negative 2 times negative 2. So essentially, square root of 4 doesn't exist, so we could say the answer of this one is no real solutions. So know that there are situations where we're going to take the square root of a negative number, and that is quite literally impossible for our current abilities. So that is where we get this sort of situation. If x squared is equal to a and a is positive, a number, then we can actually solve for it. But if it ends up being that sort of thing where x squared is equal to a negative 4, we will not find any real solutions. So no solution. So here, let's practice a couple of problems. We need to solve this problem solve this quadratic equation. So we're taking it up a notch. We have x squared plus 5 is equal to 5. So to start out with this equation, we need to be able to subtract 5 because we need to get it in that format of x squared is equal to everything else. So x squared is equal to 0 in this case. We need to then take the square root, and we end up with x is equal to the square root of 0, which is 0. So there is our final answer. What we can say about that particular situation is we probably have a parabola that vertex is right at the origin. That's kind of cool. Our next problem, we have 4x squared minus 25 equals 0. So let's get it into that x squared equals a format. So we're going to add 25 plus 25. So we end up with 4x squared is equal to 25. After that, we need to divide by 4 on both sides because it's still not in that x squared equals a sort of situation. We want to get all of those numbers to one side. So then we have x squared is equal to 25 over 4. Here's the tricky part. We need to take the square root of both sides. So the square root of x squared is simply x. But the tricky part actually comes into the part where we have x squared is equal to 25 over 4. And we can rewrite that as saying the square root of 25 over the square root of 4. So the square root of 25 is equal to 5, and the square root of 4 is 4, so is 2, whoops, almost messed up majorly, is 2. So x can equal a positive or a negative 5 halves, or positive or negative 2.5. Kind of cool. All right, so let's move on to our last little bit. Let's try a couple more problems. We have 100 x squared plus 49 is equal to 0, so we can also solve this problem. Let's subtract 49 from each side, 49 from each side. And we get 100 x squared is equal to a negative 49, and then we're going to divide by 100 on each side. So we're going to divide by 100 on each side, and we have x squared is equal to negative 49 over 100. So take the square root after that, square root. And we have x is equal to, I'm sure you're already seeing it, we can't take the square root of a negative number. X is equal to no real solutions, because we have a negative 49 over 100. We have a negative number in there, so it's not going to work out. So let's try another little problem. We have 36 x squared is equal to 1. Our last little step we need to do is divide by 36 on each side. So we'll just simply have x squared is equal to 1 over 36. Take the square root of both sides. So we have remaining x is equal to the plus or minus the square root of 1 over 36. So that means x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 1 over the square root of 36, which is also equal to plus or minus 1 over 6, because the square root of 36 is 6 and square root of 1 is 1. So there is our final answer. It could either be a positive 1/6 or a negative 1/6. Last little bit. These particular problems are essentially just getting you to think about square roots and how close they are. So I always suggest the very first thing you do with a problem like this, when we need to round to the nearest hundredth and we don't have anything quite in there, I always want you to make sure your answer is going to be reasonable. So whatever you put in your calculator, if it pops out a very interesting number, you'll know that it's wrong. So in this case, I look like at this particular problem, I have x squared equals 10, and I need to take the square root of either side, or of both sides, and I'd have x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 10. And I think about 10, and 10 is technically pretty close to 9, so I know my answer is going to be just a little bit above 9. So if I were to take the square root of 10, I end up with the answer of x is equal to plus or minus 3.16. And the hundredth place is at sixth place, and the next number was a 2, so I know that I would just round that up and say 3.16, plus or minus 3.16. Next problem, we have 0 is equal to negative 2x squared plus 80, so we're going to subtract 80 from each side. So I see negative 80 is equal to negative 2x squared. I'm then going to divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. So 80 divided by negative 2, or negative 80 divided by negative 2 gets me a positive 40, and that is equal to x squared, square root of either of both sides. So x is equal to plus or minus 40. If I think about 40 and think about other squared numbers around it, we have 36 below it and 49 above it, and this 40 is closer to the 36, so I'm expecting to have something just a little less than 6.5. So if I took the square root of 40, I end up with x is equal to plus or minus 6 point, sorry, I already screwed up, 6.32. Final answer. So these are our final answers rounded to the nearest 100th. So I hope this helps clarify some of these square root questions you may have. Work on the homework. I hope this helps, and I will talk to you later. Bye.